Hello and welcome to an episode of the Selfish Podcast. Today we have Hibby from World Love Bank, which you'll find out a lot more about. But first, we're going to get to know her and her life and her story. And can you share, Hibby, where you are in the world and what time of day is it for you?
Well, hello, and thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your show. My name is Hibby, and I am from Vancouver, British Columbia, and it is about 10:45 in the morning.
Oh, nice. Always, I'm just curious for myself, like I said, Selfish Podcast, to know where my guests are from, because it's so beautiful to connect with people in an instant these days and have this technology at hand. So I truly appreciate it. I'm in the south of Spain and it's currently 7:45 in the evening. So it's just the sun has just started to set for me here. What I like to do with my guests is get to know them on a more personal and intimate level. So I like to start at the beginning and hear about their childhood and their life. Can you paint me a picture of what life was like pre 10 years old?
Oh, pre 10 years old was pretty amazing. I come from a family of five. We're originally born in Cape Town, South Africa, and we immigrated to Canada when I was about two. I'm the youngest of five, and I just remember having a really good childhood in regards to, like, my mom would be singing in the kitchen, and there's always someone to play with because I was the youngest, and we traveled a bit. Not traveled, actually, moved a bit. But when you're a child, you don't recognize why it's all happening. But we had opportunity to, we had one home, and I could start seeing struggles. I didn't realize what was going on, but we ended up moving from our one home that my dad had built to Vancouver Island, which is quite a distance away. We had to take a ferry, and we had 12 acres. We're living out of a camp, not even a camper van, his GMC van he had redone as he builds a new house for us on 12 acres of land. And, my mom just kept everything happy, kept everything going. And, we had a pet deer. Everything was, everything was amazing. And that's how usually things, well, I don't know. For me, I remember my childhood up to 10 was actually, it just seemed like it was filled with music and ease.
Yeah. And I imagine, like you're saying, if you're building a house and you're 20, you're surrounded by nature and having a pet deer as well. Is that a deer that just sort of came into that bit of land and just got accustomed to you guys and you'd feed it and like pet it, or you just see it go past now and then?
No, I remember coming home from school one day. I was like grade 3, and there was this this is after my dad has built the house. We were kind of living in the bottom portion while he was building the top, and there was the box that the refrigerator had come in, and I was like, it was in the middle of this big room that we had, no walls yet, and I'm like, what is it? And my oldest brother's like, go take a look, and he picked it up, and it was this baby fawn, and with the white dots, and he had brought it home. He had found it on the side of the road, and the mother had been hit by a car.
Oh,
so of course we took it in. We named it Bambi, and my mom, we just fed it bottles and bottles of milk, and it would sleep on our bed. It would walk around with us for 3 years. It was a full-grown deer, and we would be able to stand on our deck when the home was built and yell for our dog, which was like a little tiny dachshund called Duchess. We'd be like, Duchess, Bambi, come. And out of nowhere, you'd see these animals completely opposite, in size, come bounding out of the trees, hopping on all fours, a little dachshund hopping on all fours like the deer. It was that's what I mean. It seemed, it was incredible. And then for some reason I thought I could speak deer. And I make all these crazy sounds, and it actually works. The deers in my neighborhood now still look up and they're like, who's calling me?
see, I've seen deer in the wild, but they're very scarce and cautious creatures. So I've never got close to one at all. And I've also never heard one. They seem to be so silent, even in their footsteps. So what does a deer sound like?
I'm not doing it.
I wondered if you would have known, because I imagine it's a funny sound, but I've not. Yeah, I have no idea.
My children laugh because literally because we live in this area close to the mountain and the deers come down all the time. So the deers are coming down now, but we would be in the field, like we'd be at the school and playing soccer and we'd see the deers across the way. And of course I'd start making the deer sounds and they'd look up and they'd start walking towards me. And the kids are so used to it now. But yeah. I because they started making fun of me, I stopped over the last few years, and I don't think I can quite. I'd have to start practicing to get it back again. But it sounds. They say it sounds like I'm actually speaking whale from like, that whole show. It's not whale. It's deer. It's a big difference.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And so back then you're living on 12 acres, and I imagine that's like quite a remote area. Like, how was school life? What did you do? Was you homeschooled, or what? How did school work when you was a child?
Oh no! I mean, this is like I said. We're talking pre. This is pre 10 years old. No, we basically had to. It was about 3 miles. Was it? Yeah, it was about 3 miles to the bus stop where we'd have to get dropped off, and then the school bus would come along the Island Highway and pick us up and take us to our school. So it would drop me off at my elementary school, and then drop my sister off at her middle school, and then drop my elder siblings up at the high school. Like it was all along the highway. But yeah, it was a bit. I wouldn't say it was remote, but it wasn't like. There was no need for homeschooling.
Okay. Yeah, no, interesting. Like, just wondering when you're living out there, because it's always, to me, I've seen like certain things, especially in Canada. I don't know if it's because it's known for it or something, or the wood, but I see like these big wooden cabins that people build out of like actual logs and stuff, and they look magical. Was it something like that your dad built, like out of the actual trees on the land?
Oh no. He built like a full-on house, like
Like an actual house, like, oh, okay.
like it was like a
I'm just
winding
wondering.
staircase.
Yeah, I was just wondering as I'm
No,
picturing
he
it,
was a
like whether
builder.
it's like one of them really remote houses that
Oh,
looks nice, or it's like an actual
no,
house.
you're thinking like, and it's beautiful, like those cabins in Whistler, and yeah, no, he built like a full-on home with the stucco and big roof, like giant fireplace, and the whole thing. But in the end, it was a big mistake because, he ended up not being able to find work. His goal was that he had thought it was a remote and it was going to grow and it was going to be like a community where he could live and we'd be able to have, like our family would be able to sustain itself. But it ended up where he had to keep coming back to the mainland on a ferry every week to work.
Mm.
And so we ended up staying there for 3 years or maybe 2 years, 2.5 years. And he would come back and forth on the ferry, working in the lower mainland and then coming back to see us on the weekend and then work on the house and then come. And it was, I imagine it was quite difficult and challenging for him. And then we ended up losing the home and then having to move back to the lower mainland.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Yeah, that, like you said, makes sense. And it's not like you can do have the digital work like we do these days, where people can be a bit more remote and find work online.
Yeah, he was a builder, so
and you can't exactly build online.
You can't build online. Maybe in Minecraft, but no.
Yeah. Do you remember when you was a child, like your first ambition or dream, like saying you was like, oh, I want to do this, I want to become this, or something along them lines?
Yeah, when I was young, I wanted to be a dancer, like jazz. It sounds so strange, but yeah, it was one of those things like ballet or jazz. And I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to date me, but that's okay. I remember watching the show Fame, and it was one of those things where I thought I was going to be the next dancer. And then my mom said to me, if you break your ankle, your career's over. And I was like, oh, really? And I always remembered that. So I never went as far as I would have wanted to, but I always loved dance. I always imagined myself as a dancer,
Oh
like
no.
ballet or jazz.
Yeah. So no, that's interesting. Become sort of a dancer and stuff, and I want to know what your, like you said, it seemed like quite a magical childhood up to 10. What was your say? What comes to mind when I ask what was your first struggle in life?
Um, when you ask that, we try to I look back and I thought instantly because I'm dealing with this particular struggle as it's manifested in my life, and I'm I'm growing through it. But um, I had I had a struggle with body image because I was extremely thin, and being the youngest of five, I had my brother used to always call me like a bone rack, and I just could not gain weight, and it was just it had nothing to do with the level or the amount of food I ate. It was just that was my metabolism, and at that time, you're living on an island and you're living on 12 acres, and you're just running around doing whatever you can, right? Like just
Yeah.
running in the forest and having fun. And I just never could gain weight, and so I was called a bone rack. And it hurt my feelings, and but it was my big brother, and I think that's really not really a struggle. That's just siblings.
Yeah,
I
no, so I
realized,
think it still counts as your first. Like you said, that's what comes to mind first. That's why I ask people, not what's your first one, just what comes to mind first, because it's always interesting what first does pop up.
well, and the funny thing is, it probably wouldn't have popped up except that you had asked me about going back to
Hmm.
what was it like before 10,
Yeah,
and that to me is if I were looking at around that age, that was it's kind of interesting because that was my biggest struggle at that time. At that time, being called a bone, being called a bone rack by your brother, or that was my challenges back then. Just kind of fitting in, and the fact that we're living remotely, and some of the other kids live more in town, so I never had the opportunity to go and have play days and things like that. That's just young life stuff. But when we moved back to the city after those 3 years, that's I found that's when the challenges happened for me, because we ended up moving into a different community, and this community had a lot of racism in it, just because I'm a colored woman, but we come from South Africa. We're all are colored, right? My father's Arabic and English, and my mother is German, um, Asian, and African.
okay.
So we got quite a mix, and we all look different. There's 5 children from the same parents, but if I were to describe my oldest brother, he looks more like he's biracial, like African and Caucasian, like an African American kind of,
Yeah,
gentleman. And then my other brother, he had more of my mom's Asian eyes, so I would, he would look more like a Filipino, and then my other sister looked more like Persian, and then my other sister looked, they're all beautiful people, and my other sister looked half Asian, and then I came along and I was like dark skinned, but I didn't have the Asian eyes. But then, we all look different. So when we moved back to the city, we lived in this community where there's a lot of racism, and it was in the 80s, and you just had people yelling out just not very nice things out the window at you, and not just children but adults, or they make and it was because it was like a um East Indian kind of community, and we're not East Indian, but I could easily pass for that, especially if I lived in that community. And I had people you know just say things, and you just felt like, what is happening?
mm,
That was like my first struggle, was trying to find my identity, because back then it was South Africa was going through the apartheid, and you talked about, oh, I'm South African, and people quite didn't understand. They didn't understand what that looks like or what that actually is, because we're
yeah,
actually
no,
from.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, no, very interesting, and like like you said, I find it fascinating that you all look different, but I've seen some, like me, I'm mixed. I'm Indian, English, Irish, and a bit Sri Lankan. And as far as I know, that's what I could trace back. Because my dad's from India, but he's got like his dad or granddad's Sri Lankan, and it mixes. My mom's half Irish, half English. And me and my brother, like some people say, oh, we can tell you're brothers. Other people say you look nothing alike. I've got dark skin. He's got really white skin. He's got blue eyes. I've got
Mm-hmm.
like green brown eye, like, and we just look really different, but almost at the same time, like we look the same, and we went to the same school, and teachers would like, oh, I know who your brother is, and then someone else would say, like, I'd say, oh, you're not related to this person, are you? And I'd be like, yeah, and sometimes get that one where they go, oh, I hope you don't behave like them, you know?
Yeah, it goes over the looks and into the behavior, right?
Yeah,
Because the behavior is actually probably more succinct, right? Is that, you may not look alike, but you'll behave the same because you grew up under the same household
yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes,
But yeah, well, that was it too. And the interesting thing is that, as I've grown up, I've had the opportunities to speak to, like, my other siblings, and um because we all look different, they had their own issues. Like, maybe they didn't face the exact same racism that I did and in that community, but then there was something else that they faced. That's why I know that we all go through our different struggles.
yeah. Yeah, and for me, it was where I came from in England was just south of London, and it was quite a big, like a big small city, 150,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
and your school has like 2,000 students in it, in like your what would be a high school. Um, and I remember the strange thing in my school is because I wasn't one particular race, I was accepted by the Indians, and all the races were in groups. Indians with the Indians, the Pakistanis were with the Pakistanis, and the English with the English. And they pretty much didn't really mix. They all were in their groups, and there was a lot of all three groups. Um, but they all like tried to pull me into their team. I felt like it was like because I've got a bit of each. It's like I would be with the English kids, and they'd be like talking bad about the Indians, talking bad about the Pakistanis, and sort of like nudging me that it's all right because you're like pretty much one of us. And then I'd go to
You
the
just got
Indians,
it.
and they'd be, yeah, and then the Indians would be talking bad about the Pakistanis and about the English and going, no, it's all right because you're like one of us. And then the Pakistanis would do the same, and they all do the same thing. They all really talk terrible about each other, so much racism. But somehow I was in the middle, that I was just neutral almost. Like they all actually were nicer to me. But I was also quite a tough kid, so I got away that I couldn't get bullied.
Yeah.
So that helped. But they also, it was just such a bizarre when I look back on it. It was such, I was aware of it at the time as well, because race was never an issue for me.
That's so funny because I feel the same way. Like, well, it was at that time, but then when I got older, it was like I knew that I could mix it with anyone. And I think it's funny
Yeah,
because what you would say too is like people would just come up to me, and like right now my hair is light, but people would come up to me like, "Oh my God, I just love your tan." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like I am a colored woman, but I'd met someone once in at a club or whatever, a tennis club, and he was a forensic police officer that would recreate the facial
yeah,
structure of people's faces after, if they found like a skull or one. And he called me a caucasoid, and I was like, what? And he said, if we were to rebuild your face, and this sounds weird, but if they had found my
yeah,
skull and rebuilt my face, they would have rebuilt me as a white woman. And I was like, oh, because I have Caucasian features.
yeah,
And I was like, interesting. But yeah, the same thing when I was growing up, and then we were there for 2 years again in that community, and I definitely toughened up. Um, and then I moved to another community. I was like, okay, do I fit? Do I hang out with the Filipinos? Do I hang out with the the black girls? Do I hang out with the whites? And it didn't matter. I was just like, you know what? I'm chill with everyone. I don't care, and I just treated everyone the same. And I just had friends, and I stopped trying to put myself into their package or put them it was just like, I could recognize things coming from the outside. But again, like you said, I was tough. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be me, and you be you. And if I like you and you're nice and we get along, great. And that's kind of how I kind of positioned high school.
Yeah, no, it's very similar for me in terms of like I didn't want to, I almost wanted to not identify with any particular race either, because I just saw all they did is talk about each other so badly. I was like, well, I feel quite good that I can't identify to one. And I'd hear one saying, "Oh, you should only stick to your own race," and I'm like, so who am I meant to be with? It's like
Mm-hmm.
I can't find another exact one. And where I was like the only one who was half Asian and half English. Like there was no mixed kids at all in the school. That wasn't a thing yet as such. And yeah, and I remember that was funny. And then my first serious relationship I had, she was from Nigeria, and she was really dark skinned, and her family had moved over from Nigeria and stuff. And then that just blew people's minds. Because not only was it not acceptable to have, say, a mixed relationship for a white and black, I wasn't even clear what I was, but it was clear we weren't the same.
Right.
And that was interesting to walk around, and just the racist stares I would get. Like I could see some people that were black that were really angry at me, looked at us literally with disgust. And then the same from white people, same from Asian people, and then some people that were really nice and really happy and didn't seem to bother them at all. And it was just very interesting when I look back on it. It was fascinating because I've always just looked at it without trying to feel it too much.
And I think that's really the goal in life, because like I said, my father was Muslim and my mother was Christian from the missionaries in South Africa, but she ended up converting to Muslim. They just said, my mom always said, like, follow the 10 commandments, you're going to be okay. And you know what? Everyone has red blood. And if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. And it was like, that was the bottom line. Like, keep your mouth shut. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. And she said it with such conviction. I was like, it's a rule. My mouth is shut. But, it doesn't stop anyone else from saying things. And you just have to, grow. And I mean, it sounds all easy, but when you said you were tough, like I was tough, like I did face abuse when I was, when we'd moved back from the island, and, I was a young girl going through puberty and stuff. And I had faced, a little bit of, abuse in that area. And it just, it shook me. It was like, then who am I? And then, we moving again to another community. And it was just like, I just wanted to be that tough person. I was like, nothing is going to hurt me. And it was about that switch, like I'm like, nothing bothers me, but nothing hurts me. But it does. It's just, you just learn how to have that space between what people see and what you feel.
Yeah, and what I wonder if you can resonate with this at all, because what happened to me, and it wasn't from them things, because them things happened with race and that for me, but that wasn't my worst, say, traumas and stuff that affected me. Like my mum was severely mentally ill my entire life, and that caused me a lot of pain. I became a carer and I had lots of suicidal issues when I was young. And when I got to my teenage years, like this toughness and this fighting force came, and I started boxing and really physically strengthening myself up. I had a lot of anger, and I didn't want to hurt anyone. I was just like making sure no one can hurt me. But I also started to really numb my feelings because I didn't want to feel the pain and the suffering. But then through that process, yeah, people couldn't hurt me, but I also couldn't feel the good feelings. Like I lost all the sensations of excitement and real love, and all them things just got number and number and number as I numbed all the painful things.
100%. I agree. The truth is we're children. So we're only doing, what we think from our child mind is going to be useful to us. We don't have all those skills to make these better choices, but it was the same thing. I started, because of the abuse, it was like right away, I self-harm. It was like, I knew, looking back now, I knew I was screaming for help, but it was like, no, like, help me, but don't help me. Give me attention, but don't look at me. And then it was like, okay, getting involved a little bit into like, okay, I'm in grade 8. I think I'm going to go to this party and have a drink. and these kind of things. It was like, oh my gosh, you consume this external substance, and all of a sudden, like, you don't care and you have courage. And it was, you know, it's what carried me through. But at the same time, it was exactly as you said, like, you just stop having the ability to care and you miss out because, you know, I look back and I think back to those times in school, and there were some really great things that happened, and there were things that, you know, that weren't so great. And I don't remember feeling like, I have snippets. I don't remember the big feelings because I remember more so, don't feel, let it go, erase it from your memory. And I think, you know, as I've gotten older and I've reflected back, I'm surprised at the little memories that come back to me that I had blocked for so many years.
Yeah, because I think it's one of the things, like us, we can try and block our memories or lock them up, but it's like every experience, every moment we've had is always within us. Like the same as if you suddenly smell say like a nice apple pie, and you're reminded of something your nan made you on a Sunday, like when you was 5, and you're brought back to
Yeah,
that moment, and you're
exactly.
like, that memory is within you already. And it seems that all our memories are, and they can be triggered unless we sort of rewrite the story to them events and change the actual, like the way I see it is like a computer. And you know, you have like files, and then you put your files. So you've got these files that are like trauma, and within that file it says do not open, do not open, do not open, loads of explanations. But if you get to a point where you can go back and you're like, do you know what, I can cut that out of that folder and put it in a new folder called gifts, and write the title as like, this blessed me with this site, this force, and rewrite that, their memories no longer sort of come up in such a discomfort way. Have you found any process like that in your life where these events that happen to you, that you now have rewritten that story?
Um, I wouldn't say I've rewritten that story, but definitely I understand where you're thinking is in regards to, like, you know, the exclamation marks and the files and the do not touch. And what I have been able to do is to look at those stories in my life from an adult, right? And that's the biggest gift, is like a healthy adult mind, you know, where I am not exposed to any outside issues where it's affecting the way I think, you know, and just having a healthy look at it, digging it up and saying, you know, this was my part, this wasn't my part, this is where I was a child. And as well, like you said, like, there is a gift there. You look at the past and you don't regret it, because it's made you who you are today. And whether you had to struggle through a certain part or grow and you had to put on the tough skin, whatever it may be, that was the past. And who you are today is all bundled up in those things. And if you can take the lessons, because this is really important, that I've learned, is that every part of my life, there's been a lesson. And sometimes you can't learn when you're young, but if you look back and you can learn the lesson in that experience, the suffering stops. But if you go back and you, like, you know, people like, my life's on repeat, I just keep doing the same thing, keep doing getting the exact same results. That's what Einstein calls insanity. Doing the exact same thing, expecting different results. So when you actually look at something in your life and you go, you take out, like, your personal involvement, and you just look at it and you go, what could possibly be the lesson? And you look until you find the lesson, and you really go, oh my God, that was the lesson. And you acknowledge it and you accept it. The suffering in that whole experience stops, and you're like, oh, I can take the lesson out of it, leave the rest in the past, and I can move forward and grow. That's definitely what I have been able to do with all of my past. And like, when things happen today, and I know right away that I need to look for a lesson. So things I don't carry baggage. I don't have to regret, you know, yesterday, the day before. If I make a mistake, we all do, we're human. If I say something to my son that's like, you know what, I could have said that nicer, I reflect and I'm like, ugh, okay. And I'm humble. I'm a human being. I can go back and say, you know what, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to make it sound that way. And, you know, how are you? And clear it up right away, because now I have the ability to behave in the way that I want to be, like, as an adult, as a mature person who actually does care about other people. And like, if I do something that's, not nice, I feel it. Like before, I never felt it.
Yeah, like you said, that process at the beginning, to some I've noticed, like even the concept where they're like, "Oh, what do you mean? Look at your past as a lesson." And there's a struggle at the beginning for a lot of people to start, because it's a painful place to look. Like they haven't got themselves into a good place to start looking. It's like taking off lots of layers of goggles, say, to actually be able to look at an event clearly, not emotionally. And I've seen that with some people, but I've also seen people that have got past that stage, and they have started to look for the lessons, and then put them lessons to use in their current life, like, and actually make them of service in some way to others. Like you said, there's a complete change in how they feel about that event. They can talk about it, they can share it, whereas before, like I told you with my mum, I couldn't utter the words, "My mum was ill," and I say was because she passed recently, but I couldn't utter the words and go, "Oh,
I'm
my
so
mum's ill."
sorry.
Even, "Oh, don't be sorry. Did you do it?" I always catch people like when people apologize, I'm like, "Did you do it? Why are you apologizing?
I'm sorry for your loss. Like, no,
Why are you
it's
sorry?"
sorry because I have
I'm
empathy.
I'm
I
happy
don't
I
mean
was gifted
sorry
with
like
a
I'm
yeah,
responsible. I'm
yeah,
not
but that's a
responsible, please. Don't get me
yeah.
wrong.
But I hear this sorry, and I don't like. I hear sorry a lot, especially when it's like
Opinionated.
it feels like it's a normal response. But to me, it's like, no,
Mm,
my mum gifted me with an amazing sight and life, and I can choose. Like you said, choose. She gave me the most lessons I could have imagined, because I had the most
uh,
chaotic life from her experience. Yeah, and yeah, for years it seemed like unbelievable suffering, and I thought like I went through should have, would have, could have, like how my life would have been different if she wasn't like she was. But there's a
she did
waste
the
of my
best she could.
imagination. Yeah.
She did the best she could. Like my mom was like anyone who'd met my mom, she was the most loving person in the world. Like, like as you would say, like if you had someone like, different, and everyone would be like, "Oh my God, your mom was so great. She was so loving. She was so, like just like that, but what she didn't teach me? She didn't teach me how to handle things. Like everyone does the best they can with their experience. And like my mom was the most loving woman. But at sometimes like, if I look back in my life, it was like, I didn't learn the skill set to be strong, because I was always, it was so easy. It was like, just if you're not going to, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. Like it was like, though, like it was just those rules. But it was like, but what if I do need to say something? Like I didn't have the ability to fight back. So when things had happened to me, it was like, look at the rainbow, look at the, and it was like, hold on a second, but I still need to, there's still pain going on. So it's very interesting. And I'll tell you just talking about mothers, my mom passed away on August 4th, 2020. And that's my birthday.
Okay.
She
Yeah.
died on my birthday. And it was that same thing where it's like, what is the lesson? And I just had to say, okay, well, if my mom passed on my birthday, one, she knew that I was going to be able to handle it. And two, if the universe opened up heaven's gates for my mom to pass on my birthday, then it's got to be a really good day. And listen to the birds. Timely.
Yeah.
And that's how like everything has to be put into a frame, because you have to realize we decide as we grow how we want to feel about it, because it's just a feeling. And with people who are struggling, if my experience has been, if you are using external substances to not feel, and you want to learn how to feel and deal with these with life on life's terms, you have to take out those external substances, because they will always they're like a plug to your feelings. They'll never let you feel. And the truth is, when you unleash it, it's going to feel gross, it's going to feel ugly and yucky. But that's what those are like years of feelings bottled up. But once you clear it all out, and not with help or with the support, um, you'll find an opportunity to to like have some peace and serenity and freedom from that, because then you have your gifts, then that, like you said, then that little spirit inside you starts to grow, and then you start to look and you know, at what you can give back to the world and what your experiences meant, and you know, where you could be of service to someone else.
Yeah, definitely. And that getting into service and that process, like I introduced you as World Love Bank, and that's a part of your life now where you're giving out service. And can you explain how that came into your life as an idea? And yeah, just explain what it even is.
Oh, thank you for asking. I am so grateful and proud to be the founder of the World Love Bank, and it is a health and wellness app that I had created, and I had the idea in 2012 when I had went through my own mental health challenges and bankruptcy, and you know, just feeling really lost and wanting to be able to um, put value into the world. And I was like, you know, one thing I know for sure is that I love people. I love the world, but it just doesn't seem valuable. Like love just doesn't seem valuable. And this is in 2012. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to build a bank. I'm going to build a bank, and I'm going to put love in it and put my love in it, and anyone else can put their love in it. And that way, none of us will be bankrupt. It was like the simplest idea I'd ever come up with. I'm like, that's it. And then anyone, anywhere could access the words, I love you. And that was kind of like the idea. But as I looked into it at that time, technology was very expensive, and I couldn't quite understand how to make the intangible tangible. Like love is
Yeah.
very euphoric, and you know, it's you know, it's out there, and it's like, how do you, you know, how do you bank it? And it was something that I was like, I'm going to do it. So I created the World Love Bank, and I saved the name, and I was like trying all these different ways until 2019 when I was like, I figured it out. And it's a health and wellness app, and basically it's on iOS and Android, so Google Play and the App Store, and it's one safe place where people can create and store messages and expressions of love for those they care about most, and have them safe, not mixed in with like their iPhone messages or mixed in with other files on their computer, but like it's in a bank because it's valuable. Because if something were to happen to the person that you love and you want to hear their memories or a message or a story, you just go to your bank, you have their folder and their file, and you can click on it and you can listen, or you can watch the video that they left. So that's how the bank works. It has a joint account where to join the bank, you have to say the words, I love you. So we've got these compilations of I love you, I love you, I love you from people all around the world. And no one's ever bankrupt, because if you haven't heard I love you, you can go in there and you can hear it. It's anonymous, but you know, you can feel the vibration of love. And then you can use the app to send messages to people in your contact list. You can, you know, when you receive messages, you can save them. You can create messages for the future. You can listen to meditations and, you know, check into your emotions. It's like banking what is actually the most valuable thing in the world, and never losing the voice of someone you love.
Yeah, nice. And that you said it's on, so if I just went to like Play Store or App Store and typed in World Love Bank, you come straight up?
Yep. One word, World Love Bank. And it is, it's free for everyone to use for the audio. And then if people want to upgrade to use the video, or to use like a legacy account, which allows you to do like self-love messages into special folders, or, you know, like a time capsule, so you can actually send messages into the future. That's an upgraded version. But for now, anyone and everyone can hear the words I love you and be able to send messages and receive messages in the audio form. But one of the other things, the things that one of the other inspirational stories I have to share about it is because a few years before, I'd lost my brother. And before I'd lost him, he had been struggling, and he happened to call my mom's house, and I picked up the phone and we were chatting, and I knew he was struggling, and I was like, I love you. And he's like, no, you don't. And I'm like, I do. I love you. This is my oldest brother. And he's like, no, you don't. I'm like, I love you. He's like, no. And I just kept saying it. And I must have said it about 15 times. And then finally he's like, okay, she's not going to give up. So he's like, I love you. And I could hear it. And it was like, it took him so much to say it to me.
Yes.
And, and then we hung up. 3 months later, he ended up dying. And he left behind his 3-year-old son who would never hear those words. And I'm telling you, like, I love you from somebody that matters in your life is something that you don't think to record, but it's so precious. And if you could just say those 3 words and bank them, that's going to make a difference to the people that love you. And you can add way more stories than that, but those 3 words are not something that we actually intentionally save, but they are so powerful.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice idea, and not even an idea now. It's a practical, actual, physical thing. It's not just that, like you said, love is a bit, sort of intangible, and you've made it a bit tangible. And no, it's really nice. Like you said, there is the powerful thing. A big part of my process was the self-love, and going through that process and realizing I wasn't, during a lot of my life, I'd conditioned myself out of that for myself. And the power of sharing that with people, and the power of sharing it with yourself, even as reminders, is really inspiring. And like, I can see it really helping a lot of people, because it is the strongest power out there is love.
It is. And people have asked, like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, one, I want to make sure that anyone anywhere can access the words I love you, whether they've heard it from people or that they just need to hear it from the world to believe that the world's a loving place. But it is so powerful. And I hope that one day we'll be able to use our I love you reserve and use it for meditations with noetic science, and give people who are in comas an opportunity to hear that, hey, guess what? The world is still a loving place. I would love to have them have the headphones on and just hear voices all around the world say, I love you, I love you, I love you.
That'd be very
I think that's it. Like, it's this, like, right now as we speak, I have a huge smile on my face because, again, like, all the struggles I just talked about, like, it doesn't, you get to where you are now and you realize that you can take your past and make it important and valuable for the future, and to be able to bring this to the world, and to have love be like my goal and my career to give people love. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better job, so I guess I had to create it for myself.
Yeah, nice. And like you said, it's to me, it all comes down to that it is just a choice, and that's the hardest bit, I think, for some people to grasp when they're really struggling, because they're like, I wouldn't choose this, and it's like, no, you have the choice in how you perceive the past, and that takes time and practice to find them lessons and to find them gifts. Like you said with your brother, it's like that's a prime example of him giving you a beautiful lesson on the power of that word by not giving it to you for 15 times. Do you mean that stuck in you so strong? Because
he
he
made
did that.
he made it work for it. Like, he made me work for it. But in the same way, I said it 15 times. It was only his one time that mattered. You know what I mean? And again, I still wish I could hear it. Like, I know it was said, and that's really powerful. But if I could hear it, it would be like he was right here whispering in my ear.
Yeah, it's funny. My love Danielle, every time she says to me, she's like, "Oh, I love you," and every time I say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. What did you say?" And she goes, "Oh, I said I love you," and I was like, and I laugh because I'm like, "Yeah, it's nice. I just want to hear it twice." And every time I get her, every single time I get it twice, because every time.
Yeah, I'm sure. You know what? That's perfect, because it's like it's worth saying. It's definitely worth saying. My son, he's 15, and gosh, he uses the word probably 20 times in a day. Like, and that I could be more. He's so aware of how great it sounds. He says it because he wants to hear it back, and then having the ability, because we lost not just my mom in 2020, but my dad in 2019. we'd lost some of the historical stories from Cape Town and like District 6. And it was like, he says to me, Mom, can you also record my bedtime stories and put them into the app? Because I want to have those stories in your voice for my kids.
Nice. And how old is he?
He's 15.
Okay. How old was he when he said that?
15.
Okay, yeah, just checking. But no, that's still really nice. And
Oh yeah, no, but this is it. It's like whatever you give out into the world, it comes back. Like my kids, I mean, he's an athlete. He plays basketball. He's like, he studies. He's got his friends. He's still a typical teenage boy. But the effort in how we, my husband and I, have raised them is that same thing. You know what? We're all human. Stop and take a look at someone else. And if you're having a conflict with someone, like step back and maybe just ask them how they're doing, because it's not always all about us, though it is a selfish podcast, right?
yeah.
But yeah, 15, he's very self-aware, and the truth is life is temporary, especially what we've experienced and what we're experiencing with COVID and the war. And I'm so, I don't want to say sorry, but the world is in need of people making that choice, trying to do the next right thing, helping others,
choosing
helping
to look
themselves.
for a lesson in the moment. It's like, what can you learn from this chaos at the moment, and then how can that be of a service? How can that actually make life better? How can that make life more beautiful? How can people feel more love? It's like it's shown it clearly in this time.
Well, and it doesn't have to be this, like, I love you is so powerful, but you can also think it, and it's an energy, right? So if you don't have the ability to make a difference in like these grand big gestures, it's the small things that count. Love is not necessarily this big thing. It's a very simple thing, like when somebody drops something, picking it up for them so they don't have to bend over, like just it's what you said, like looking for lessons, but also it's a practice. If you start with the little things and you just practice doing little things without telling anyone, it's that idea that that you have the power to make a little difference. It just grows. It's a seed that's worth watering.
Yeah, definitely. And a big part of why I put on like my YouTube content is about like self-love, because that was a big change in my life. And the difference between self-care and self-love, when I've talked about that, it's made me sort of realize that love, like it's an energy, it's an attitude. So like you do something with care, but you have the attitude of love, because you can care for, say, a dog, but you're not doing it with a good attitude. It's not with love. So it could be fed and it could have a little blanket, but you could be doing it horribly and you're still caring for it technically. But there's a big difference between when you see someone that's doing something with love and you can, like you said, you feel it. It's passed over in that presence and in that way they perform an action. So I think, like you said, the words, if someone's genuinely putting out the words, I love you, and they're saying it with real, genuine authenticity, that has a force with it, and a big one.
Well, I believe it, and I'd love to see it. I would love to see more of us share love and heal ourselves and grow, because we are as we grow responsible for the way that we behave, and sometimes people just don't realize how good it feels, and sometimes it's even impossible to even imagine that they're capable of it, or that it's an option, but it is.
Yep, definitely. We're coming to the end of the show because I keep each episode roughly to an hour, but I have a few just small fun questions I ask every guest at the end of the show. Do you have time for them?
Well, it depends what the question is, but okay.
Yeah, they're just simple sort of answers, but if you want to elaborate, you can. You're welcome to.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first question is, choose one, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
What motivates you? What excites you?
Music.
And what does the opposite? What drives your energy down? What turns you off?
Negativity, people saying hurtful things to each other, violence, things that it's just like, oh, like
Yeah.
that turns me off, obviously. But when I said music, it was like, oh, like right away I was thinking like symphony music, but it's like all music that just has that kind of light, airy feeling, because it carries, like, it's graceful. It carries my spirit. So I like it.
Oh, nice. And maybe this will be similar to your next one, but what sound or noise do you love?
Violin.
Nice. And what sound or noise do you not love so much?
Sound or noise? The sound of just something dropping, like glass breaking.
Yeah. What do you love about yourself?
Everything.
Nice.
I what do I love about myself? I love my heart. I love, I love that I love people. Like, I think I'm, like, it feels good to put my head on the pillow and know that, like, I get to be me.
Oh, nice. And what do you love to see in other people?
I love to see other people's eyes, and then when we're speaking and I look into their eyes and I can see their soul and I can see their spirit, and they awaken, and whatever it is they're talking about, whether it's something positive or sad, or but just to look into their eyes and know that they know that they're being seen and that they're being heard.
Oh, nice. Last question. What do you love about animals? This can be wild animals or pets, however you want to perceive the word animals.
What do I love about animals?
Yeah.
The fact that I think that the fact that they're alive, they're no animal is more alive than the other animal. Like, so I remember reading that, where it's like, whether it's an elephant or a mouse, like, they're both alive. And I think that you can tell what I love about animals is that they also have that natural instinct to connect to our spirit. And I believe that. I believe it with all my heart that, like, if you were to, like, open your heart to an animal, like, whether it's a dog or, like, they can feel it. They have just the same capacity to feel love as we do.
Oh, nice. Oh, well, that was the last question. Is there any last words or anything else that we didn't cover that you felt you needed to share?
Well, I just want everyone to know that the World Love Bank is available. I built it for the world. I need to have, if there are people in Spain listening, or I need to build up the global account of I Love You. So you have to go into the App Store or the Google Play and download it and give your anonymous I Love Yous to then be part of the World Love Bank. And please try it out. Don't be shy. Be intentional with your love, and share as much love as you can, because your love and your voice is so valuable to those you care about and those who care about you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll make sure I go and download the app myself, and I'm going to check it out and share some love.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Luke. You really have been an inspiration to me today. And I'm so grateful for your time and having me as a guest. I feel very privileged.
Thank you, and I appreciate you for coming on and being open, honest, and authentic. It's beautiful to, like I said, to be able to have these conversations and share with someone, just in a time when we can't share so easily face to face with so many people. We can still have beautiful conversations and share that with people.
Exactly. No, so thank you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to staying connected.
You too. Have a beautiful rest of your day. I know you said it's early in the morning for you, so you've got a whole day ahead of you.
I do.
I'm going to go settle in for the night pretty much.
Okay, well, you have a wonderful evening, and thank you again, and blessings to all.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.